where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Valerie, Steve, Denise, and others, we see you. We want to give David a chance to respond about humility is a strength, even in crisis.
Absolutely. Like you were saying about your negotiation, when you think of negotiating from a position of strength, humility does not mean that you're come in sort of crawling, pleading, begging for the other side to tolerate you. Think of George Washington. This is a guy who built up over year after year, decade after decade of living by integrity, of putting down the sword, so that when it came time to be entrusted with enormous power, there was no question. And when his enemies came at him, their objections were dissolved right before their eyes, because everybody knew that this is a guy that when it came to crunch time, he gave up power when he was at its pinnacle.
Just remember the story of El Cid. Let's go to Valerie in Texas. Hello, Valerie.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, and thank you for calling.
Good. I heard a question proposed. I think it was by the lady on your panel, and I apologize. I don't know her name.
Renee.
Renee, okay,
Hello.
I'm sorry. What I called to say, I heard you say something to the effect that why is it so hard to apologize? It's simply, it's pride. It's easier to hold on to that pride than it is to apologize. And the reason I'm saying that is because I used to be that person. It didn't matter what you showed me, what you told me. You can show me where I'm wrong, and I'm still not going to apologize. I was just an angry person. I didn't like my childhood. My parents went off to do their own thing, and my grandmother had to come out of retirement to raise me. So I didn't learn to do what I needed to do, give in and do what I needed to do until my husband and my friends sat me down and told me about myself. And then I got into the Word, and I became stronger. And now I find myself apologizing even when I'm not wrong, just to head off an argument, just to diffuse it, especially in the workforce, because I know I have to work with people, whether I like them or not, it doesn't matter. I still have to work with them, so let me be the bigger person, diffuse it, so we can move on.
Thank you for being such an example in knitting. I tell you, that takes strength. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. Steve in California, thank you for your patience. You're on the air.
Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate you having me on the air.
Yes.
My response, and I wasn't going to say anything, but my response as far as the football player, I think he showed ultimate humility by not doing something to the person that was threatening him, and that's a true sign.
Armstrong's rolling his eyes right now. He can't believe it.
Let Steve finish. Go ahead, Steve.
Can I finish my thought?
Please.
Because I have something to say about it, because the reason why I feel like that is because if you truly do have God in your heart, you can have compassion for your enemies, that you don't have to take their life unless they're ultimately, trying to come at you, and you're left with that choice where you have to. But I think he's also smart because he's also laid the groundwork so that he's done the legal way. So if this person comes after him, then now if he does something, well, hey, they're not going to take everything that he's already accumulated and just haul him off to jail. And as far as the male guest, I didn't catch his name, but he mentioned 3 presidents.
David.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that part. But those 3 presidents that he mentioned, they all were still for slavery to a certain extent. So how can they be so loving if they were co-signing on enslaving another human being?
There are many of the founders that were against slavery.
That's right.
Many of them.
They, according to the history.
But listen, the one thing that David said, Steve, the one thing that David said, and it's something that you just implied, no matter how imperfect a person it may be, it does not mean that they don't have good in them, that they can't have humility and other good qualities. Sometimes you can do bad things, but it doesn't mean that you're going to always be a bad person.
I'd point to also.
True. I agree with that. But these presidents were in a position where they could have made that change where we wouldn't be in the state that we're in now.
Abraham Lincoln did. Abraham Lincoln is one of the presidents he mentioned.
Okay, well, why didn't he send the Africans or the slaves back to Africa like he originally wanted to do?
He changed his mind. He came to the realization that was a very bad idea.
Yes, it would have been.
In part because of his friendship and respect for Frederick Douglass. There's a remarkable way. I think you could also look at George Washington, and while he did not have the response to slavery that we might have wished, he did, upon the death of his widow, manumit the slaves that he could, and he provided a scholarship fund that provided for their education until the 1830s. That was a lot more than many of the other founders did. He also fought, as Abraham Lincoln credited him with, to put slavery on course of ultimate extinction. So each of them we'd have to look at, and you're right to raise the question about James Madison, but I think it's indisputable that Abraham Lincoln played the pivotal role in bringing freedom and equality to all.
Stephen, thank you for calling, brother.
Not equal.
Thank you. You're welcome. Let's go to Denise in Ohio. Denise, thank you for your patience. You're on the air.
How y'all doing today?
Fine, thank you.
Good. You know, I thought about this situation with the football players, and one of the first things that came to my mind was, you know, this is this guy's job, and to get into it with someone on your job, you may jeopardize your job and get fired. So
somebody on your team.
He went and told, you know, that this was going on because maybe he didn't want to jeopardize his job. He may not have been afraid, but I think to have humility and to be meek, you have to be strong.
Well, but let me also tell you this, Denise, and you and I agree on that. There's a time and place for everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there was a time he needed to keep that brother's butt. Seriously.
In the locker room.
I tell you what.
Okay.
I was one of those little girls that would go after the bully.
Yes, ma'am. Sometimes you got to do that.
I was one of those little girls that would stand up and say, leave her alone.
Absolutely. We needed you. Yes, we did.
I remember that. Gym class in the locker rooms. You play
and listen, that bully did not mess with you.
No, and that bully wound up having a fight, and then that bully respected me.
Oh, yes, respect. There you go. I like that.
So, but I just, the thing about it is, you know what? The guy needs to stand up. He's a man. He needs to stand up.
Yeah. Yes.
And stand up for himself as a man and say, hey, he don't have to say it nasty, man, I ain't taking your crap. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. What did Michael Jackson say? Leave me alone.
And the worst part was, these were his teammates. I mean, they're supposed to be on his team.
I mean, but if you think about what's the difference between teammates and your neighborhood friends?
It's all the same. It's all the same.
That's true.
But let me just tell you something. In my household, that would not have happened.
Oh, no, mine either.
No, it wouldn't happen in my household. Because you know what? Every now and then, a good fight is refreshing. I don't mean no harm. Every now and then, I need some combat. That's just the way it is.
I really agree with you, Armstrong. Somebody needs his butt.
Yes. That's all you need. Thank you, Denise.
All right, have a good day.
I don't mean no harm. Every now and then, you need a little dust up. Right, y'all?
I mean, I agree, but this makes me think about, I've been thinking about Bruce Lee. For some reason, Bruce Lee comes to mind. We're talking about humility. Bruce Lee people perceived him to be arrogant during his day, but he was actually a very, very humble person. And when we're talking about using humility to disengage a confrontation or a negotiation, an adversary, that's something that he actually practiced in a physical form. He actually mastered the art of using his opponent's momentum against them.
Yeah, they use their own weight against them.
Exactly. So if you're able to do that in a tactful way, you become that much more powerful because you're also harnessing their unnecessary energy.
You know, I found it interesting in your book. Two other things I'd like for you to get into. Benjamin Franklin's dilemma and the ability of being good to learn not to be good. I thought that was a fascinating. You got to talk about that. Let's start with that. Not to be good.
Well, you think here of Machiavelli, right?
Oh, yes.
So the idea that Machiavelli really embraced was that you didn't have to actually be humble. You could pretend to be. And there was a kind of embrace also of that kind of faking it for a lot of other virtues. And we hear a lot about kind of the Machiavellian nature of our politics today. But I think there's a lot of false humility that certainly is prevalent on the Hill and our state capitals.
Really?
It's no
Very
surprise
much.
at all. There's a lot of that kind of pretending to be one thing and doing very much another thing. And
Sort of to lure them in and kind of play a weak hand.
well, humility has a certain attractiveness. It does, for all of the reasons that we've been talking about, have some real strengths, and people can recognize that even in pretending to be humble, maybe they can bamboozle enough voters. Maybe they could be able to convince enough of their colleagues that they actually don't want the power that they're seeking. The problem is that if you value a virtue for its utility and not for its truth, you're going to end up with something that actually doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't know that any of us can really judge what's inside a person's heart. We can't say who's truly humble and who's faking it. If you fake it long enough and you stick to it,
that becomes
then
a
you
reality.
become it.
Yeah.
The real test is what happens when you have a great deal of power, and then the proof is in the pudding there.
And the zebra can't change its stripes.
And the proof is in the fact that this government is very dysfunctional. If they were humble and had as much humility as they claim to have, we would be way more productive. There's too many egos clashing.
That's right. They're servants, public servants.
Yeah, if we are for the people, we all have similar interests as different as we may be. We all have a general goal in mind across the board. So there's no reason, I feel, that there should be so much conflict.
That's right. I think that gets to Armstrong, your second point about the
Franklin's dilemma.
That Benjamin Franklin observed. If he was going to become humble, just as soon as he should feel that he finally had mastered that 13th virtue that he had on the list, well, then he'd be proud of it. And a nation has a similar problem in that while it's harder to identify what are the characteristics of a humble nation, the dilemma is, how do we retain humility at the same time we're an exceptional place? How can you combine humility with greatness? And I think that was really what Franklin was desirous of in his own life. He wanted it for the United States of America. Think back then, we didn't have a lot to be that proud of. We hadn't done that much, but we aspired to be great. And when you aspire to be great, it's really hard to keep that humility along the way.
So you think we shouldn't walk around the globe saying USA, we're number one?
I don't think that that's what American exceptionalism at its best means, because you can do it without the chest thumping or the foam number one finger and all of the sort of ugly American caricature that we've seen. I think American exceptionalism is really rooted in a humility to say that our founding is something that should keep us in our place.
Even still, we're only number one because there's other countries to compare ourselves to. We need to be comparing ourselves to ourselves. Are we the best America we can be? If so, that's sad right now. I would be sad to say that this country is in the best position that it can be in.
2/3 of Americans say that we're not living up to the vision of the founders right now.
And all I want to say is this. I would love for people to go out and buy this book. As an author, Renee, you understand, we know what it takes, the sacrifice, the discipline, and just the emotional trauma. It's such a lonely journey writing a book, and this is such a great book. In fact, I feel different even having this conversation. I'm not even myself. I'm tamed.
This conversation's been a pleasure.
It is. Listen, you have made my week. Seriously.
Thank you, Armstrong. This has been great fun.
I have finally been tamed. Humility has done it for me, this book. You know what? I can't even when I said go out and teach that brother a lesson, I didn't give the energy and the fuel that I normally give it to. I kind of had to hold back a little bit. So my humility bloodline is working right now.
Yeah.
It kicked in. So I thank you for writing this in all bookstores. I appreciate always Renee's question. I appreciate Charlton and Matthew and Anthony, and especially the callers for participating, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, especially Valerie. You talked about that you used to be angry, but you show us all that we can change and find a better way and find humility. Thank you for reminding us that we all are imperfect and we always have something to work on, especially humility. thank you for writing the book.
Armstrong, this was a real honor. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Good night, everyone.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Bye.